always forget to unmute, Thank you very much. And I'll share the screen. Hopefully I get the right one and then we can get going. I think we're almost there. Yeah, so do you see the slides?
Yes, they're coming through.
Oh, very good. So yeah, first of all, I'm calling from UBC campus, so on the unceded territory of the Musqueam people, and always grateful to First Nations indigenous people for allowing us essentially to enjoy this part of the world, beautiful part. So thank you so much. And all the previous speakers have touched on issues that we'll hear from my talk, but I'll mainly be providing information from research on oceans. Mainly there's economics in there, but I call myself an interdisciplinary oceans and fisheries economist because I'm not one of the economists who say all we should care about is to maximize profit. There's a lot more to our oceans than just making money out of it. And so that is my point of departure, so. All right, so you can see from the title of my talk, I'm saying that the ocean is our life. And Yusuf, you touch on that in your comments, and I'll be itemizing some of the things the ocean does for us, and it will by no means be the whole list. It's just part of the many things that we humans rely on the ocean for, sometimes without even knowing that the ocean does all these things for us. So a basic outline, I'll say, why do we want to sustain the ocean? Why do we want to? Still, you have to try to convince people. This is not a given. And economics of sustainable ocean management. How can economics, and again, this is my take on economics, is how can economics integrated with other disciplines, with other perspective, with religious leaders thinking, indigenous people thinking, ecological knowledge, local knowledge. How can you bring all those together in an integrated fashion in order to help us sustain our oceans, not only for us, but also for future generations? So then I end up with a bit on financing the sustainable ocean economy. And I'm doing this actually just to show you that no matter how good your ideas is, and this actually connects to what the rabbi is saying, that talk is not enough. And to get action, you need some way to support and fund and provide the resources for people to be able to do this. So just today we published a paper in Nature Communications, and that was the subject of the paper. So I'll just tell you a few things about that. Now, this is, I like to start here because really, there are many of us who don't realize how huge the ocean is. It's 70% of Earth's surface. So some of us even say, why do we call it we should call it planet ocean, right? The Earth is only 30% of it. And so to me, there are about 3 points you can make out of this. In the first place, it's just too large to ignore or to mess up. We cannot afford to mess up our ocean. It's simply too large for that. Why do I say that? I tell my students this: if you keep scoring 30% in your exams, you will never be in this class to start with, right? So you cannot mess up 70% of something that is important to you and think that you will be okay. So that's one big point. The second point is that because it is so large, it doesn't mean that we cannot destroy it, we cannot abuse it. And we have the technology to actually abuse the huge ocean. There's all these big boats that fish have no chance. There's no how the fish can hide away from our big brains and technology and all those things. So it's big, but we can actually, in this evidence, as I'll show you, that we are actually pushing the ocean to its limit in many respects. Now, the third one, which is hopeful point, is that because it's so large, it doesn't mean that we cannot sustain it, we cannot protect it, we cannot keep it going into the future for all generations, right? So, and that is a hopeful message. And sometimes I give a talk in Africa, in Asia, Latin America, I say, come on, Rashid, we are so small, what can we do? Whatever we do, the big nations will just run over us. There is some truth to that, but at the same time, we all know that little drops of water made the mighty ocean in itself. So every little drop, every little effort, and this again is about action, right? Don't say that I'm too small to do anything. I mean, most of the good things and some of the bad things that have happened in this world actually started by one person. So let's focus on the good things here because we want to sustain our ocean. All right. Too large to mess up, not too large not to mess up, and too large doesn't mean that it's not too large to for us to keep it going. Now, here are some numbers for you. 60% of the world's population lives within 60 kilometers of the coast. When this was published, it was years ago. I'm sure it's even more than that because we people are attracted to the coast, and people in Vancouver will tell you this. And there are many reasons why we do this. It's just a good part of the space on Earth to be at the coast. And it generates about 50% of the oxygen on Earth. And this is where the title of my talk comes from. So the ocean is our life, because without the ocean, essentially, it means that 50% of the oxygen on Earth will not be there. And so that's half of a life. What is half of a life? Half of a life is no life, right? So the ocean is our life. And the ocean regulates the Earth's climate. And people in Vancouver, we know this like crazy, because in winter, even in summer, you rather be in Vancouver than in Winnipeg, right? Which is in the interior, right? The ocean does that. How much are you willing to pay for the moderate weather we enjoy, both in winter and in summer? I talked with my friend in Lethbridge, and he says it was 35 degrees sometime last week, right? Just like that. And they get minus 35 degrees in winter. The ocean is part of the reason we have this nice weather here. It is crucial, therefore, for the Earth's environmental balance and survival. Absorbs the heat, and I could go on and on and on. This is too important to ignore. Then cultural and spiritual values. I had a student who actually did research on the spiritual values of the coast here in BC. Amazing, right? You go out to the coast, you have to go like this weather, just go out there without COVID. The kind of people you will see, families having fun, enjoy. You just walk on the sun or a little bit in the water, and you just feel some spiritual benefits and so on. So transportation, shipping, think of that. Without it, many things will not move around the world. It's a playing ground for many of us, recreational tourism, ecotourism, and it is jobs, support jobs, livelihoods, incomes, especially in places where alternatives for these jobs are actually minimal, so it's almost a life-saving source of livelihood for people. And how about the protein we get from the ocean, the fish? And it's not just protein, it's also macronutrients. It is good animal protein compared to beef, for example. That's what the scientists and the medical people are telling us. So if you look at the fish stock in our ocean, and this applies also to the freshwater systems, there is so many activities that take place around this fish. So we're hanging on the fish in so many ways. I mean, what are the fish you catch and eat, the jobs and the marine research? I would have to look for another job if not for the fish in the ocean, right? Which may be hard or simple, but I would have to find something else to do. All the things that surround agriculture. Many of us think agriculture will save us, but actually, if you're farming salmon, that means you are crushing more of other species like Peruvian anchovita and sardines and so on in order to create the fish meal and oil that salmon wants to eat. Otherwise, you have tofu, you don't have salmon, you don't have fish, right? And this connects to what Alison was saying. A lot of these small fish come from developing countries where there is malnutrition, there is need for food security. So you have all those global dynamics playing around here. So this is central to so many things we do. Now, again, just to give you some numbers, every year, on average, we take about 100 million tons of fish out of the ocean. Now, just think about that. This is massive. I mean, 100 million tons of fish. To help people to really crystallize what this means, what I do is to convert this to the number of mature cows. And if you assume a ton is the weight of an average mature cow, that means we're pulling out of the ocean 100 million mature cows year in, year out to feed people. So for the food side, that's fine. But think of the natural system. Think of the marine ecosystem, the ocean. What system, even as large as the ocean, can sustain this massive pool of biomass out of it? So we have to think about the sustainability aspect of this seriously. Fish is good protein, and like I said, micronutrients. And I say fish is food that is important to the rich and the poor alike. I mean, if you're in Vancouver, you have a good day, normal times, not COVID times. You want to go celebrate, you go to a restaurant. One of the things you will order, most people, or many people, is fish, right? Now, if you are from Southeast Asia or parts of West Africa or parts of Latin America, the Caribbean, fish may be the only animal protein you can afford to have in your meals. So this is really, really important in that respect. Jobs, I mentioned jobs. 260 million people around the world, according to our estimates, draw some income from the ocean, the marine fisheries sector, if you think about the whole value chain of the fish. 260 million. And what really blew my mind is when we put this data and to determine where these jobs are, you look here, they are all large, basically, apart from Myanmar, large developing countries. And to me, this was a big message. So fish is also a national and global security resource. Can you imagine all the young people that be getting their income from fish in Nigeria or in the Philippines or even in parts of China? Without that, they will have nothing to do. Can you imagine the social and economic problems? And these things will not stay in these countries. We're a global community, right? Some of us want to build walls, but you just have to forget walls. They are not going to work. We have to let the whole world work if we want to have a sustainable, equitable world, right? So you know, I gave this talk I showed this figure when I gave a talk at the State Department. Fortunately, Obama was the headliner for that day, and this was in 2016, and I said, you know, you all remember how quickly Obama became gray when he became president. I said, if not for fish, he would have been grayer, because all these big nations, problems they start there. Think of Somalia, for example. You all heard about the piracy, right? Some of the reasons for that, according to readings and researchers, because there was no government to protect the ocean, there was a lot of dumping and stealing of the fish, illegal fish. So local vigilantes grew up to protect their fish, and that grew into the piracy, right? So this is a crucial security resource for the world. Now, I'm now going to share with you my favorite model of our relationship with the ocean, but even the larger environment, because yeah, that's what the ocean is. If you take it down to the basics, what do people do to and with our environment? It's just those two arrows, I think, boil everything down. We go to the ocean and we take all the good stuff, the things we want, the things we need, the things we desire from the ocean into our economy, and we do all our cultural, social, and all those things. And at the end of the day, what do we produce? We produce waste, the plastic, the CO2, the carbon. We pump them back into the ocean. And really, if we don't do the taking wisely and we don't do the pumping out wisely, we're going to kill the system that supports us so much. So for me, this captures all the issues we think about in terms of how best to sustain our ocean into the future. You have to do the taking well and the pumping out well. Otherwise, we are going to hit the rocks as we seem to be doing. So how are we doing? Clearly, our oceans are under threat. Our fish stocks are in threat. So here, the top figure here is what has been made famous by one of our professors here at UBC, Daniel Pauli, in a paper in 1998, described what is happening to our oceans as a phenomenon which he described as fishing down the marine food web. And this has three components to it. First of all, when we start fishing in any water body, the first things we do, we take the big valuable fish first. Take them out, then we go to the next big valuable. And then the next, that's the fishing down marine food. So we are taking too much, but not only that, we are truncating the natural network, the natural ecosystem that nature provides us. We are taking that down, we're taking too much. And the third thing we do, if you look here, you look at the bottom, in the beginning, the habitat is richer. So we plow the bottom of the ocean with all our big trawlers, destroy the habitat, and so this is what is known as fishing down the marine food. And we see this happening around the world and has consequences, as I will show. How about climate? Climate, sea surface temperature rising, that's what you're seeing. If it is yellowish or reddish, that means the current temperature of the surface of the ocean is higher than the long-term average. So the more reddish it is, and this is what we're seeing. And then you have ocean acidification, you have deoxygenation, and all the processes that the biophysics of the ocean is changing. Then you have the plastic and the debris in the oil spills, my God. So there's a lot of pressure on the ocean. We've got to do something, just like social justice, and they are interconnected, as some of my slides will show you. So this slide is simply to say, when you hear me or many of us talking about marine biodiversity, we do care about marine biodiversity because this is part of our system, which is bequeathed to us by nature or by God. You can say it anyhow, but the bottom line is it's part of the natural system. And what we see, these are diagrams to summarize the amount of fish we take from the ocean and how much of that comes from healthy fish stocks and how many of them are unhealthy. And what you see from 1950, we take a lot of our fish from healthy stocks. And as time goes on, more and more, we are taking the fish from depleted stocks and sometimes even crash. That is below 10% of the maximum we've taken. And these are figures from our group at UBC. This is from the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, and they show the same trend. Now, these changes in the ecosystem and the fish stock are not just for fun. This is real. They impact people. I mean, so this guy is saying, is that all the shrimp I get after all this work? You know, in West Africa, where I grew up, people, you will go for 6 hours and fill their boats when I was a kid. Now they go for a week and they can get a fraction of what they used to get in 6 hours, right? This has consequences on people, food security. The lady here, that is something we are seeing more and more, environmental refugees. So if you are in your coastal town or village, climate change is messing up, the fish is gone, people don't just sit down and die. This is what people have done throughout history. When things are too difficult in one place, you move. This has nothing to do with whether you are African or you are Asian or Latin American or European or indigenous. In general, people move when things are difficult, and wars cannot stop us, we the people, right? So let's just solve the problems rather than trying to create all sorts of boxes to put people in. It's not going to work. It doesn't work in the long run. So this is a summary figure that shows you, as we mess around with the ocean, with the physics and chemistry of the ocean, that has consequences on the animals in the ocean and therefore on people who depend on these animals. And this figure is from a paper we published in 2019, and this was really, it hit me very hard. What we said is, what will be the benefits of meeting the Paris Agreement as it relates to the health of the ocean and the benefits we get, for example, the fish we catch. And so this figure tells you that if the world were to push through the Paris Agreement, ensure that we don't go over 1.5 degree relative to the long-term average, then what you will see is that some countries, so here on the y-axis, you see the change in the maximum potential catch that countries or regions or people can take from the ocean if we implement the Paris Agreement. And here is the contribution per capita on the x-axis of how much people in this country or region contribute to climate change through pumping of carbon. And so, you know, if we deal with climate change, the countries, you see Guinea here, Sierra Leone, these countries pump very little per capita, but they get the brunt of climate change. And this connects to what Alison was saying earlier. So we do the pumping, they feel the pain. And how ethical, how moral is this? How economically just is this? And so for the sake of the world, because these people will not just sit down and perish because their fish are gone, they're going to also, we will hear from these consequences. And you see here, this is continental. Again, Africa does well if we did this, because the fish, what we see is as the ocean is warming, the fish are moving towards the pole. So Iceland will get more fish, and not not the Philippines, not Senegal. And that has, even though Iceland per capita pumps out more CO2. So a lot of justice issues in here. This is a specific study we did for West Africa, and you can see, man, the kind of losses are just devastating. I mean, you look at a country like what? That's Ghana, and you look at Nigeria, you come up here, and you will see big projected losses due to climate change. And these are the places where people actually need more food, right? Relative to say in Canada or in the global north. Yeah, there's lots of things to think about here. So and another thing that is happening in our oceans is illegal fishing. There's a lot of it going on, whether it is boats from Europe or from the rich Asia, from China, from or even from North America, going to the developing well waters, sometimes with the permit to do so, sometimes without. So in this paper, we actually calculated the consequences of it. And you can see Africa is losing huge, about $13 billion in economic impact being zapped away by illegal fishers to the richer parts of the world, which leads to losses in income for people so they can live their lives and their children to school and keep the family going. Taxes are lost by governments that need taxes more than anything to fix schools and infrastructure and hospitals. So huge consequences here in terms of the. Another thing I wanted to drop here, and I'm going to go fast here, it's good to have time to discuss. We need to see the ocean as a global system. We have one global ocean because they are all interconnected. You have interconnection at the level of nature. The fish move, currents move. You have plastic moving from one part of the world once it gets into the ocean to another part. All these things are interconnected, and we have to think more holistically, more comprehensively. You cannot just say, oh, I protect my waters and I'm fine. No, you are not. Things happen. When the nuclear blowout happened in Japan, I used to get phone calls saying, how is our fish? The waste, is it going to affect? And there were some evidences of that. So what you do in one part of the ocean can really affect what happens in the other part. Now, many of our fish stocks are already overfished. In Canada, we did a study and published in 2019, 6 Canadian stocks that have already been so overfished, we are not getting nearly as much as we would. And thinking about Indigenous First Nations people, the sockeye salmon is going down and all the other species, this has huge consequences. So there are efforts some of us are pushing. We really have to do our best to bring this fish back as much as we can. And when you talk about this, the first thing, the politics of fishing effort, right? The politicians say, gosh, you want us to cut fishing effort, what will people do? And so on and so forth. And we and others have shown that actually if we have the political will and the guts to really pull back a bit, the fish will come back to a good extent, and we move away from the current misery, have more resources for people who really need them. So that's that. Now, some of the policy things, you know, we give a lot of subsidies, what we call harmful subsidies, where the government is actually giving subsidies to the large industrial fishing boats mainly, so they can go and fish in indigenous waters and also in waters of developing countries. Europe is big on this with respect to West Africa. Don't use taxpayer money to aggravate inequality and degrade our ecosystem. Please don't do it. Don't do it. There are ways to use our tax resources to support the environment and support real people living in the coast who actually need some relief. Yeah, I'm dropping this here for you. We talked about I talked about illegal fishing already. This is just a picture of how much is going on around the world. And I mentioned the Horn of Africa, Somalia, you can see, and that led to piracy, which was very costly, not only to Somalians or Africans or East Africans, but to the world at large. So this has global consequences. And a lot of our fish are shared between countries. So we need cooperative management. You cannot do it alone. If you are dealing with Pacific halibut, you have to talk with the US. The US has to talk with us. Otherwise, we drive the whole stock to hell, and then we have the losses. So cooperative management at regional, bilateral, and at global level are important if we're going to solve the problem. We talk about buying insurance. We need to carve out part of the ocean and just leave it alone, what I call fish banks of the world. There are parts of the ocean we just stay away. Stay away. Give the fish peace. Give them a break so they can prosper, they grow, their eggs and larvae can come into country waters close to us, so we don't need to pump too much carbon to go catch the fish in the high seas, areas far away beyond national jurisdiction. So each of these points I'm making are full presentations or more. I'm just trying to drop ideas here so we can have a nice discussion. Now we talk about ocean finance. All of the things I said cannot happen without adequate and good quality financing. So this is a report we did for the so-called high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, which is made up of 14 sitting heads of state, including Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, and they're from all over the world, from Asia, from Africa, Latin America, Europe, North America, who have come together and say, look, the world has to do something to protect and sustain our oceans. So a number of reports were done for them, and I will just quickly show you some of the things we found. The ocean economy is a cornerstone of the global economy, contributing trillions, as I told you. In fact, some estimates say we get about $1.5 trillion economic impact from ocean economic activity. So it's like, but when we look at it, despite this, the sector is drastically underfinanced and underinvested. Less than 1% of the economy is actually used to protect the ocean, which is crazy, right? For something that is so important to us, we should invest more to make sure it goes on. Then you have climate change aggravating the pollution, the plastic. So to do this effectively, that is to protect the ocean and achieve a sustainable ocean economy, significantly greater finance is needed. And I'm talking about good quality finance, not the finance that aggravates overfishing or aggravates inequality. And you can get more in the report and in the paper that appeared in Nature Communication today. These are some of the figures in the paper. I don't have time to really go through here. But essentially, we identified a number of barriers to why we are not having good quality finance to support the ocean. And then we propose solutions to them. And these are some of the things. This presentation will be made available to all of you if you want to go into the details. And so we itemize different kinds of finance and where they can be helpful and where they cannot be helpful. So we need to, not just any kind of money we want in there. We want money that works for nature and works for people, not just promotes the pockets of the 1%ers, for example. Another figure, that kind of category, we need an enabling environment. There is a lot of government money already going into the ocean to support fishing in a harmful way. Don't do that, move that away. According to the IMF, about $4.7 trillion of subsidies goes to oil and gas. Can you imagine how crazy that is? I mean, this is pushing climate change and all the consequences. That's the last sector you want to give a penny of our tax money, but that's where it goes. So divert distance and make them work for people and nature rather than undermine them. And all our studies and others have shown that if we protect our ocean, sustain it, let it work properly for as many people as possible, the returns is actually 1:5. Even if you're talking about dollars, for every dollar we invest and put to protect the ocean, we get $5 back, which is a good investment in how you look at it. So to conclude, I think we should look at fish as an indicator of how our ocean is doing. And I use fish here in parentheses because when I mean fish, I mean life in the ocean. We don't want to have a dead ocean. We want to make sure that ocean is teeming with life. That means we don't overfish, we don't take down their habitat, we don't pollute, and we need to work hard, because actually if we don't take care, we can end up with a dead ocean. Then that will be really, really a sad state of affairs. Thank you all for your attention, and thanks to the Islamic Unravelled Anti-Racism Initiative for making this event possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sumaila. Again, it's amazing to see such expertise and detailed breakdown of the situation. I think many of our viewers are unaware of what an important role the ocean plays in our survival as a species, our well-being as a species, our physical, psychological, spiritual, even. Most faith traditions have a huge symbolism attached to oceans and water. Yeah. And to see that the state it's in, it's heartbreaking. It's genocide against trillions and trillions of life forms. And I think, your presentation, we will make sure that it gets heard by our community, by other communities, so that people can understand. If you have a few minutes, do you want to share, what do you think the solution for government and for the average person is? What can people do to help change this?
Yeah, no, excellent question. Essentially, we all have to be involved at different levels, I think. Yeah. So as an individual, we are consumers. We can make choices, and more we are getting ways we can make environmentalist wise decisions, whether you go into the supermarket, what you eat, and so on and so forth. For example, I personally, more and more, I'm eating vegetarian food, and that is so good. I feel light and good. My brain works better than being loaded with beef, for example. So we can operate at our own level to improve this, so we don't go after all these millions and billions of life forms, like you said. The second thing is, as an individual, you really have to participate. Your group is an example of a civil society organization, environmental NGOs. We should try to support this, because these are the truth tellers in our society. They keep businesses and government, they keep them in check, put their feet to the fire. We need that. And as voters, and this is something I always say, please don't forget the environment when you go out to vote. I mean, because if you do that, you're forgetting our only home, right? So you can't tell me that you want a sustainable environment and you go and vote for people who want to wreck it, right? I mean, you just have to have that in mind. So there are different levels at that. At the company level, we do have companies. I did a paper for Van City, the local credit union. They called me and said, how can we get our customers to really know that this climate thing is a big issue that is important for them? So you know what we did? We calculated how much it will cost a typical BC household, how much more will it cost them to eat the same quantity and quality of fish under different scenarios of climate change? And this was unbelievable, huge. We will have to spend much more. So this took the whole discussion about climate to people's pocket. And the day we published this, I was busy from 6 a.m. to about 9 p.m. on TV, on radio, interviews, because it talked to people. And that's one city. They say, look, this is important. So companies can do. And our governments, please don't use our tax money to aggravate social injustice and environmental injustice. We need to be, and this is where civil society and all of us come in, because governments are representations of us, at least in democracies, right? And so there are all sorts of levels we can all participate.
Awesome. You know, I think that touches on it, right? It has to be a holistic approach. It has to be whether it's education, whether it's engagement, whether it's change in how we live our lives. One of my brothers, Tariq, he prefers to only eat the food that he catches or the food that he grows in the backyard, right? Yeah. So to have that sustainability be part of our way of life, I think it is something that we need to relearn. I believe the term is rewilding of people to get out of the way that our civilization has infantiled us to only be able to eat what we can buy from across the world, right? And to help change that narrative, to help change that mindset, to reduce our fish intake. And some practical information for folks, 40% of fish is mislabeled. Like you don't know what you're eating, right? I would highly encourage people to watch a documentary. I'm not speaking as to all the facts in it, but the idea behind it, Seaspiracy.
The idea behind it. Okay, you have
the idea behind it, which is to inform yourself. It's to inform yourself, to start looking into what's going on in the world. And then from there, you know, that's maybe pop science, and then take that into more real science. And again, we had your presentation, that's part of it. But we need to understand what's going on. And I'm sure there's a lot of powerful, you know, kind of industries who don't want us to be looking in too much detail of the world's oceans and what's going on there. But as people who are concerned about our planet, our future, our children, we have to. So thank you so much, Dr. Rashid. I really appreciate your time today. It was very informative. And we really thank you for your allyship and for your years of research on this topic.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Yeah. So bye-bye to the audience too. Thank you for being here. Yeah.
Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, sir.
Sure. Take care.